Now let's imagine that I want to get really fancy with this page and I want to add a web form to contact me if you're interested in purchasing this Jeep. First, we'll go into the HTML and we will add a form element. And within this form, we're going to set an action, which is to point at the URL that you want to submit the form to. In this case, we're not going to actually submit the form to a server-side script because it's beyond the scope of this video series. But in most cases, you would submit this to a PHP page or some other kind of server-side script. So we'll just leave this empty for now so that it just refreshes the current page. And then we're going to set the method to get. The method can be one of two things. It can be get or it can be post. When you submit as a get, then you're going to see all the variables from the form in the URL. We'll cover that more later in this video. But then if you were going to use a post, you wouldn't see any of those variables. So let's add some form fields and we'll submit this form and I'll show you how you can see the get variables in the URL. So first we're going to create a div. I like to use divs just to contain elements and their labels. There's a number of ways you could do this. You don't have to use divs, but I just like to do that to organize my forms. So I'm going to start by adding a label. And since this is a contact form, I'm going to add an input and set its type to text and give it a name of contact name. And then here I'll say enter your name. And now with this name intact, I can add a for label, or a for attribute, excuse me, and set this to contact name. Now this way, if somebody clicks the label, they'll automatically get the cursor inside this text input. So basically what's going on here is that this input is set to a type of text, which means that it accepts text, and that is just a simple text field. And then this name is always custom. This is a custom variable that gets sent with your post or your get. So let's start just with this example, just to get an idea of what's going on here. Now if we scroll down here, you'll see enter your name, and you'll see the text field. I'm just going to give you a quick example of how that URL works with the get method. So I'm going to enter my name here. And as you can see, after I hit enter, it appended the variable name, which is contact name, and the value of that variable. So if we were to use the post method, that would not be included in the URL. That only occurs with a get method. Now let's come back to our form and add a couple more elements. Second one would be phone number. We'll just name that phone, and we'll set the for to phone. And then we'll just add a text area and name this notes. And we'll use that in case anyone has any questions or wants to make any comments. And then lastly, we'll need to add a submit button. So we're going to give this a type of submit, and we're going to set its value to contact me. And let's go back in our browser here. So as you can see, we have the two text inputs and we have a text area, which gives us a little more flexibility. Most of the current modern browsers include this resize here, or you can actually set the height and the width in CSS. So let's get an example, see an example of how this works. Now, as you can see, all of that information is posted in the URL through that get method. Now, if we were to send this to a PHP script, that PHP script could read all these variables and their values and either email them to somebody or save them in a database or both. HTML5 also introduces 13 new form elements. The elements are tel for telephone, search for a search field, URL for a single absolute URL, email for an email address, date time, date, month, week, time, date time local, number for numerical input, range, which is like numerical input, but it allows you to control a specific range of numbers, and color. As an example, we can take a look at our telephone text input and change this to tel for HTML5. In the past, we've had to use text because tel didn't exist, but now with phone numbers, we can use tel to allow ourselves to know what this text input is and do something with JavaScript to enforce some sort of syntax. Unfortunately, the field doesn't enforce any syntax itself. But with this type in place, we can use JavaScript to determine all of the telephone input fields within our website and enforce some sort of syntax.